Good morning, everyone. As I rise this morning and I have the birds singing along with me, I wanted to present another message to you. It's about presenting yourself to the world. And I know this seems like a simple message, but this is just something that I want to share with those who are like myself, who have something that they want to share with the world, have something that they want to give to the world that might help other people. And I mentioned this briefly in previous audios. You might want to check them out. But I want to touch on it in detail today because I feel it's necessary based on the experience I had yesterday on the way home. And that is, when you share your message and you're out in public with others, make sure you present yourself well. And when I mean present yourself well, make sure that you are physically presentable. Make sure you're not offensive to anyone. Because you don't know who's around you. There could be someone who is seeking knowledge. There could be someone who is lost or confused, or someone who is, questioning their relationship with their higher power, doesn't believe, or skeptical, or going through something and maybe needs a little reassurance from a higher power that everything is going to be okay. And all they need to do is just hear a few encouraging words from a positive image that, okay, it's real and everything's going to be all right. And it could be something as simple as overhearing a conversation in a grocery store, or someone handing them a pamphlet, or referring them to a website, or giving them a song to listen to or something. But if you do these things for somebody in hopes to help them, make sure you're presentable when you do these things. I'm going to tell you a little story of what happened to me on my commute home yesterday. And I'm going to tell you how a possible good situation that could help someone turn into a negative one, because a person presenting the message was not presentable at all. Now, I mentioned before that I work in another city. And the two cities that separate where I live and where I work there's a tunnel. And it's prone to a lot of traffic. And there are a lot of people like myself that live in one city and work in the other city. And because of the traffic situation, a lot of people don't use their vehicles to go through because it's too much wear and tear on their vehicles. So what they'll do is they'll use, we have the commuter bus service that goes through the two cities. And it's usually more efficient to just use the commuter bus service because it travels a lot between the two cities. So you go to the park and rides, go to the transit centers or whatever, park their vehicles, and then catch the commuter bus. So I catch the commuter bus to go to work. And I was on the commuter bus going home from work yesterday, and there was these two older people, Christian, and they were talking about, they were having a heavy conversation, talking about, church and, the scripture. And I mean, they were just actively engaged and they were happy, a bit loud, but that's okay. I'm like, okay, they were into it, and that's great. And I said to myself, wow, they're very enthused about it. This is good. I like hearing when people have spiritual conversations, Christian, Hindu, Catholic, whatever the case may be. They were enthused about their faith. They were excited about it. And, apparently these two people must have met along the way because they didn't know each other, because they were talking about how they just met when they got on the bus earlier, prior to me getting on the bus. So they struck up this conversation, and come to find out they had a lot in common in regards to their faith. Then they were talking about the scripture, and then they started talking about society and people and how things were in society and how it needs to change. And, they just were really excited. And that's good, because sometimes you need a little bit of that energy. And it was a very positive message that they were giving, which was good. But there was one problem. One of the persons was an elderly person. And apparently, and I mean, this is not for a person who has a sensitive constitution to hear, but this person apparently wore, those bladder control undergarments. And it was very apparent that they had, relieved themselves in the undergarment, and it needed to be changed. Now, the commute between the two cities is not that long. I would say 45 minutes at the most. So when you get to one destination, there is a time period where, the bus ends at the stop point, and people can, if you're not going to, get off or if you're not going to get off and continue on, there's a break. There are bathroom facilities and whatnot that you can go to or whatever. There's always a break, because the driver may need a break, or the driver may have a little extra time, or whatever the case may be. And even though this driver was a little bit late, the driver made up enough time so when they got to whatever destination, because you could follow them on the GPS, you could follow them on trackers and whatnot. And in this case, I followed them. And I know where this person got on at was at a stop point where they had time. I don't know what happened, but I believe this elderly person probably has some mental issues, I'm quite sure. Because listening further into the conversation, there were some things that was said that was a little off. Now, she was an extremely religious person, but there were some things that were a little off. I saw the way that she was dressed. She was dressed like she was ready for church. I don't know if she went to a service when she got off the bus, because she got off the bus prior to the time that I got off the bus. And it seems like she had a whole lot of stuff with her. It didn't look like she was shopping. She just had a lot of stuff with her. And she was talking to another gentleman, and they just had this conversation. They were back and forth. Great message. But when she relieved herself, it literally smelled up the whole bus. And unfortunately, as we were going through the tunnel and the bridges and everything, there's nowhere you can pull over. So the driver had to keep going through that. And so when we finally got to our destination, the driver had to take a few minutes. So all the other passengers, and it's like the minute that you get on the bus, you smell it. And I sat behind the lady for a moment, and then I had to turn around and I had to move. And it was me and another person who worked for the company that I work at, but he was in another department. We were engaged in conversation, and I had to move. And we continued our conversation. And he was like, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I have to move." I kind of whispered. But they were having a great conversation. She seemed a little disheveled. Her wig was a little off. But just to give you an idea of people, I've seen this many times. I've seen people, some people have religions where they would set up displays on the street in different areas, and they would have their literature or whatever the case may be, and they're trying to sell their literature or trying to promote their literature to encourage people to join their faith. And they're looking a little off. Or they might look a certain way, but once you approach them, they reek of alcohol. They reek of drugs. Or they reek of cigarettes. That's not a good way to present yourself if you're trying to promote a cause. Any cause. It doesn't have to be religious. It could be political. If you're presenting yourself to the public and you're trying to encourage others to follow whatever it is, you have to be careful how you present yourself, because you don't know who's listening. And I know we live in a world where people are like, well, I don't care what people think. I'm going to be myself. And I see people that are on videos presenting their messages. I see people who are out on the streets presenting their messages. And it's a good message, full of passion, and it could be some very valid points. But if you get a whiff of them, if you look at them, they're unkempt, hair all over the place, offensive odor, coming from them. They might carry themselves in a way where they're off. It may have a good message. And some of them even have the audacity to turn around and take the context, and I'm going back to the Bible on this. For some of you Christians, you know this story. But turn around and take the story of John the Baptist out of context. And for those of you who don't know, in the Holy Bible, there was a prophet by the name of John the Baptist. And John the Baptist was not an average-looking Joe. He was considered a barbarian because he didn't look like everybody else. He wasn't a clean-cut brother who wore a Brooks Brothers suit, okay? He looked like a caveman, so to speak, and he ate locusts and honey, he was very crude-looking. He was so-called unkempt, so to speak. But he was chosen by God to serve God, and he had a very, very short existence in the world because society did not accept him. The way he spoke was very gruff and very abrupt. But his message was God's message. But he did a lot of work in a very short period of time. But the way he presented himself, he offended a lot of people. But it wasn't mostly because of his appearance. That was a very small factor, but it was because of the messages that came from God. So if he wasn't delivering God's messages, I'm sure he probably would have lived a little bit longer. They would have accepted him a little while longer. So he wasn't killed because of his appearance so much. It was because of the messages from God, because it went against what was going on. It addressed what was going on in the world. And he was destroyed, unfortunately. But a lot of these people who do go out in the street looking like this purposefully, they'll turn around and try to compare themselves and say they're like John the Baptist. That's another case, of people taking the Bible out of context, and I've spoken about this. That itself is a sin. That's a form of hypocrisy. Stop doing it. Cut it out. But when you're going to present a message to people, make sure it's packaged well where it's accepting. Please do that. You cannot go up to someone dressed to the nines, smelling like R.J. Reynolds tobacco. You can't. If you have a cigarette habit, okay. If you just smoked a cigarette, make sure, because that scent lingers. You may not know it because you got it in your system, but to others who don't smoke, they smell it. So before you go out in public and you approach people, especially if you're going to get close to them, make sure that you have that fumigated from your body. Because it doesn't matter what message that you have. If you have an offensive odor about you, it doesn't matter what you say, that person's not going to listen to you. They're turned off. If you look a certain type of way, where you're not even taking care of yourself, taking care of the one thing that Spirit has given you, that is your temple, your body, your life. but you're going to tell others what to do. People are going to look at that as hypocritical, and they're not going to want to take you seriously. So just please keep that in mind before you decide to promote a cause. If you got in your mind you're going to go out today and you're going to promote a cause, no matter what it is, make sure you present yourself well. I see it in protest marches a lot. That's a good example right there. Back in the day, I used to hear of a cause, and I used to pick up a sign in New York Minute. Then it got to the point where these protest marches started to get a little too dangerous, and I'm a little hesitant to do it nowadays. Because I don't want my life to be in danger. So I kind of pick and choose as to who I do that for now. But I see it a lot in protest marches. I see the images and I see the people, and I'm like, why are you walking out the door looking like that? And you want somebody to follow you? You can't. They're not going to follow you because they don't want to come within 10 feet of you. Looking 10 kind of crazy. So just keep that in mind. If you want someone to pay attention to your message, you have to be inviting enough so they can pay attention. Okay? So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm going to let you guys go. And I wish peace to all